We're going to start. Thank you so much for joining us. There's so many familiar faces, but I'm happy that we have also some unfamiliar faces. So welcome to EGN sponsored session on hate speech and prime time to change in Egypt. My name is Zahera Harb, and I'm a board member trustee of EGN Ethical Journalism Network, and I'm also senior lecturer in international journalism at City University of London, former broadcast journalist in Lebanon. With me on the panel is Dr. Naila Hamdy. Dr. Naila is associate professor in the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication in the American University of Cairo. She is also the graduate program director, and she has published several articles and book chapters on Arab media. She was a journalist before joining academia. She worked in news production. She's also social media and digital media expert, in addition to her work on media development and media and political participation. I also have with me Tarek Atia. Tarek is CEO, head of Egypt Media Development Program. He's a former journalist also himself, was deputy editor-in-chief of Ahram Weekly. He's the publisher of Zahma and Mantaqti, very organic grassroots media organizations in Egypt. And Tarek also has extensive experience in media training. I will actually start this session by, I know some of you might have already heard me talking and probably are aware of Ethical Journalism Network 5-point to test hate speech. But for the sake of this session, we thought it's really important to start by highlighting again what do these 5 points tests stand for, and the tool that EGN has actually come up with to help journalists in identifying if what they are broadcasting or publishing amount to hate speech or not. And it's going to be a basis for introducing the glossary of hate speech in Egyptian media that was put together by a research team in the American University of Cairo, led by Dr. Naila, and also with the cooperation and support of Egypt Media Development Program in collaboration with EGN. It's one of the initiatives that EGN is supporting and actually a partner in. You probably also are familiar with what ethical journalism stands for. It's a UK-based charity that includes a network of journalists, organizations from around the world, and advocates ethical journalism practices globally. EGN came up with the 5 points hate speech that highlights some questions that needs to be asked by journalists in the gathering, preparation, and dissemination of news and information that will help them and editors place what is said or written and who is saying it into an ethical context. And the 5 points actually starts with looking into the status of the speaker, questions to be asked like, is he or she a policymaker, an official whose speech will have an impact and reflect on policies or change policies? So why I'm actually having this person or quoting this person or using this person in my journalism. The second one is the reach of the speech. So if the journalist or media organization does not broadcast this person's speech, will it reach the audience at large in any case, or would it stay within the speaker's circles of followers? The third one is goals of the speech. So what is the aim of the speech? Why is this person saying what he is or she is saying? And what would the speaker achieve by telling me or saying what they are saying? And then the fourth one is, the fourth one is the content of the speech itself. Does the speech include calls for violence or crime? Does the speech include hatred against other groups based on gender, race, religion, or sect? And then the fifth point is we have also to assess the surrounding climate, social, economic, political. The region the broadcast or the publication is aimed at struggling with political, economic, social, or in the case of the Arab world, sectarian tension. So the idea of glossary of terms to combat or to challenge hate speech has generated from the fact that we actually need to go beyond the 5 points test of hate speech into giving journalists another level, another tool to help them identify certain terms, rhetoric within the language they use to identify hate speech. And we started, first of all, thinking of trying to establish a more kind of like global Arab glossary of hate speech. And then we realized with the work of, I think, the workshops that AGN has organized on hate speech in the Arab world, that it's probably better to start on a country-by-country basis, because each country has its own specificities in relation to different terms, and also in relation to the issues that is generating hate speech within different political context. And that's where Dr. Naila actually took the, became the hero or the first person who accepted to tackle this task, and worked with a group of postgraduate student researchers to, with the help of Egypt Media Program, to produce what has now become, I think, a very important document for Egyptian journalism, a glossary of terms to combat hate speech and detect hate speech. So I leave the floor for Dr. Naila to explain to us the process and how it all happened, and then we get to Tarek.
Okay, thank you, Zahera. Okay, so as Dr. Zahera described, it was a process, and it really started with Tarek Atia calling me and asking me if I would like to author such a document, and it was his suggestion to work with graduate students, actually. And I thought it was a really good idea because you're working with some very intelligent young ladies, but they're not journalists yet, and they don't have any baggage. So, they look at things from a very different perspective. So I really thought that was really important to the work that we did. So we started off, the first thing, and I think all academics do that, was, okay, so hate speech. I mean, we think we know what hate speech is, but what is hate speech? What is the definition of hate speech? This took quite some time because there's not an agreed upon definition. And I think early on we discovered that it really depended on the context, the country, it's culturally bound, and would differ from one place to another. So the next step was, okay, how are we going to define what hate speech is for Egypt? And as Zahera said, initially we were going to do like a regional glossary, but that didn't work from day one. It just, each country is so different to the other. So we start, with the sort of many definitions of hate speech, and then we moved to looking at documents that may have addressed hate speech. So we vetted the Egyptian Constitution, which has 2 or 3 articles that don't directly address hate speech specifically, but, refers to incitement, to violence, these kind of things, which are hate speech. So you don't have to use the actual term. Then we moved on, and all of this is in this document. So then we moved on from the Constitution, looked at Egyptian laws, addressing, again, hate speech, and then press laws, or media laws. Then we looked at the Egyptian press ethical code. Also took out anything that was related to hate speech, and so as a sort of distilling this information to get to what is hate speech. And that was our reference. That was what we used as a reference. Once we were done with that, we thought, well, maybe we should look a little bit at some of the international documents on the topic. So we pulled out things from Article 19, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the Council of Europe's work addressing hate speech. Following that process, we had then started to do different constitutions from the Arab region and then dropped them. Once we finished that kind of vetting, we came to some kind of conclusion as to what hate speech is, and I'll just maybe go forward and then rewind. But our final definition was something to this effect, that hate speech is criticizing, if you criticize individuals and groups, that is allowed. It's not hate speech. But without incitement to violence, discrimination, and or rejecting others. So we kind of went a little bit backwards because, we're very sensitive to these things like hate speech, negative image of the country, blasphemy laws. So, although we don't, want to see hate speech in the media, we also don't want it to be used as a tool to oppress media persons. So that was the thinking there. So the next step was, okay, so what are we going to look at? I mean, what was our sample? Now, we didn't really do like a content analysis or so forth. It was the beginning of work, so it was not like totally scientific, but what we did is we took a snap of time in Egyptian history, probably the worst moment where you saw, there was a lot of political divisiveness and so forth. So there was a lot of hate speech, and the media was really doing its worst job. And we looked at both print and broadcast for different examples. Maybe the ones that really stick out, not the subtle ones, the really at-your-face examples, and there are plenty. Another decision we made, and you can imagine, I mean, this, when you work with graduate students, you don't just work, it's debates and debates. So we had also endless debates about whether hate speech was freedom of speech or not, and what the lines are, and what is and what isn't. So this was also part of the process. So it was not the kind of document that you just write, there was just a lot of thought involved in that. So then we decided, as I said, to take that snapshot of print and broadcast media during a certain period and pick out some of the very obvious examples, but we also decided not to go with only blatantly political hate speech, because there's a whole lot of other examples of hate speech that, towards genders or groups of people, and I'll give you a few examples that are so common that the public and the journalists themselves have become used to it. It's like it's not even noticed anymore. So we looked at these things. Now the next step was, by then we wrote some kind of a draft, and then we held the EMDP and EJN held the Combating Hate Speech meeting in Cairo at AUC, and this was really great. The young ladies, I had them themselves explain what the glossary was about, and it had really interesting feedback and reaction. I mean, they were shocked. I don't think they realized, the importance of putting a document like that together. So there was also a lot of debate during that meeting about what constitutes hate speech and what doesn't. Again, you had that feeling that, also media persons are not, are wary of the term hate speech used as a way to kind of stifle their expression. So this was the strong feeling. Anyway, there was a lot of debate. People went through the glossary, gave us some ideas. And then afterwards, they sat with a couple of journalists for more feedback. And then one of them, Mona Salman, who was also a member of the Egyptian Editors Forum, and the former Jazeera and Egyptian TV talk show host and journalist, went through the glossary again with them. So it was like a second vetting, you know, or a third vetting process. So this document has been peer reviewed several times. So then came the second draft, which at this point now we decided it's time we use the 5-point test. We didn't want to start with it, you know, because we wanted to reach our own definition, you know, try to figure out for ourselves what hate speech is. And then once we were done with that, on the second draft, they went through every single example to see how it tested against the 5 points model. So anyway, then after all that, we start to take out some really obvious examples. But then we also decided that it was not the job of an academic or any other kind of body that is not journalistic to really point fingers, you know. So we didn't want to kind of shame journalists. And we actually, in the beginning, had the names of the programs and the newspaper and the persons. But then we decided that it would probably cause a very negative reaction. So we took out that and made also every time we, you know, quoted an instant of hate speech, we then give an alternate way to say that based on, you know, what we thought. And I've been very careful always to say that this is A, a work in progress, and B, anyone can take it and add what they like. This was a certain period of time. It's not necessarily the same issues or, you know, as were maybe last year or 2 years ago, and that, you know, you have to constantly update. And this is definitely not inclusive. I mean, this is just an example of what can be found. Okay, and then, so it's still not over. Lots of things to say about that document. Following the second draft, I sent Tom Law sent the glossary to Dr. Zahera, and she did another peer review with some comments. I met her in Cairo. We adjusted a little bit to suit her, you know, with the feedback. So we kind of got to a third draft. And I'll give you, and there was a final review, before I give you some of the examples, done again with Ahmed Muntasir and Tarek Atia at their office in downtown Cairo, where, you know, we kind of thought of, I mean, they gave me their feedback and input on some of the examples in the document. So it's been through kind of several vetting processes. Now, the kind of examples we have, as I said, are not all, they're not, I mean, you know, when people think about Egyptian media, the first thing you will think about is like political hate speech. I mean, there's some examples, but we also use some really simple things that are just shocking. Like, for instance, there was one article about street children. We have a real problem with street children. I think it's 1.5 million street children in Cairo. And there's a journalist in a prominent newspaper who actually suggested that a good solution to street children is to kill them. You know, and no one reacts. It's unbelievable, you know. So, you know, we pulled out things like that, you know, just staying away from the obvious, you know. There have been articles that have asked people to go and kill police officers. That was earlier. We've seen all kinds of derogatory terms. Yeah, for instance, mental illness is used as a derogatory term in Egyptian media very commonly. Another other things like walla fi, what's that? Set him on fire. Yeah, set him on fire. Set them on fire. You know, we pulled out even things like that actually incited people to kill Egyptian Christian Copts. And, you know, last month we had a priest walking down the street who was hacked to death. I mean, you know, it's not like we don't see direct repercussions to this kind of hate speech. What else did we find in there? So, I mean, so many, even little things like, or not, they're big things. Lots of gender-related comments, like, you know, if you want to have a derogatory reference to activists was to call them widows. Activists and liberals were called widows. But, you know, widows is not a bad word, but the way they use it turns it into an insult. So, you know, there's just multiple examples like that, and this is just a few. I mean, if someone, and hopefully we might be able to do that, started to do more systematic content analysis of Egyptian media, I'm sure we will find so many things. Actually, right after the massacre, this was the last thing that happened. After the massacre that we had in the Sinai, there was a talk show host or an anchor who actually said, I understand killing police officers, and I understand killing Christian Copts, but I don't understand killing Muslims in a mosque. Can you imagine? I mean, she's in trouble for it. But, you know, can you imagine saying, even thinking it? It's unbelievable. Anyway, so this is the story of the glossary, which now looks very beautiful thanks to the design. Thanks to the design of Ahmad Muntasir. Very, very beautiful. And we look forward to moving this further. It would be, you know, I think we have another session tomorrow where we talk about that. But, you know, I really envision this as something that we need to start building up on, using maybe online tools which are not so expensive, and having other people contribute to the glossary. And that's it. I guess I'll move. Oh, just one last thing before I give it to Tarek. I just want to say that I excluded online media. We decided actually there's more hate speech on online media than any other kind of media. It's even worse than what we see in traditional media, but we had to exclude it because it's just a huge other area. And we also felt that in many ways it's a private space, so it has a different impact from traditional media. So we excluded it from the glossary.
Thank you, Naila. I think this takes us to Tarek, and the question that is to be asked here is how actually to transfer this into a living document, Tarek. And actually, one of the things that came across in several discussions is that there's a need for Egyptian journalists to own this. So how can we make this a living document that journalists can access and share and use?
Okay, thank you very much. My esteemed co-panelists have not left me with much to say. I mean, pretty much said everything about this. I do want to emphasize, though, the word process, because I think that's really the main point of this whole exercise. And if you have the glossary, you'll see on page 29, we've actually written it in a pretty big font here that says, this glossary is still a work in progress, and the process, as has been described, was based on several meetings over the course of maybe 2 years. It involved conversations with stakeholders, and now we're at a stage where we want to take that process to the next step, which is to actually make it into a living document that will become useful not just as a glimpse at certain terms that were used over the last 2 years that constitute hate speech, but that can actually start to put us on the road towards preventing that speech from appearing in media outlets, whether print or digital or even television. And one of the ways that we decided to first experiment with doing that is we have preliminarily started to incorporate the glossary into training workshops that we hold with journalists. So the first time we did that was earlier this year at a training for which was sponsored by Awan IFRA for women in news. It was specifically targeted for women from across the region who Awan IFRA saw had potential to become leaders in their newsrooms. Here, we basically suggested to the participants who came from several different countries to try to actually create a similar formula for the hate speech that appears in their country's media. Because even though this is an Egyptian glossary currently, the initial idea behind this project was to make it regional. And I think we still have aims that it would eventually become regional, maybe in the way that, that you would have, say, a regional glossary that would include input from many different countries. So each country would see themselves in it, but then there's obviously some hate speech that's going to be cross border as well in Arabic. One of the other things that we are thinking could happen is we could have a dialogue with the tech and social media companies regarding perhaps having some of the terms in this glossary be incorporated into their algorithms, so that you know, the same way they're battling fake news, it's a tough challenge, of course, for these companies because of the pure volume of content. It's the idea of having technology help this process become systematic. So this is one thing that we plan on doing. There's also an idea that it could be incorporated into the CMS, the content management systems within newspapers, so that journalists, when they, or editors, when they're actually submitting their article to the desk or editing it, a sort of red light could appear indicating this term is a bit dangerous. Are you sure you want to use it? And it could be, again, incorporated into the workflow. The whole point of all of this, though, is to make sure that journalists feel ownership of this, and that they feel that this is something that that they themselves can contribute to. It's not a kind of document that's handed to them and said, these are the terms and you have to stop using this. No, they need to actually be a holistic part of the production of that of that document. And it really is a living document, because even when we came to print this, some of the terms we realized were not being used anymore. So there was no real point in including this. And then there were new terms. And obviously, in 20 or 30 pages, you're limited to the space you have. But once you go digital, you can have this be expanded in with no concern for the number of terms. It can be infinite. And also there's the idea of having it be almost like a crowdsourced kind of thing, where people can contribute to a electronic platform, a digital platform, so that it's constantly being vetted in a community sort of based way. That's about all I want to say. And one of the I think one of the best things that's going on right now is that we are trying to introduce this book in forums such as ARIJ and at the Women in News program, and perhaps in 2 weeks when we co-host with the United Nations Alliance of Civilizations an international seminar on hate speech. The whole idea of introducing the work we've done so far into these kind of forums where you have a lot of stakeholders who would have an interest to taking it further. Thank you all for attending, because I know it's a tough subject, and this is actually quite a good number of people that clearly are interested in it.
Thank you, Tarek. Before I open the floor to the audience to ask questions or comments, I want to bring in Egyptian journalists, because one of the things that Tarek said is that it's important that to have Egyptian journalists own the glossary of term. So I would like to ask the other Tarek that we have, how do you think that, or how do you feel Egyptian journalists, or you as an Egyptian journalist, actually want, and in what ways you can own this glossary?
معلش هجاوب بالعربي. الحقيقة من بداية الموضوع وأنا بفكر، يعني فكرت كتير إنه ازاي يخرج هذا الموضوع من غرف مغلقة لمجموعات قليلة لبراح أوسع، لناس أكتر موجودة معانا في نفس المجال وما تعرفش تقريبا عن اللي بنعمله ده حاجة. أنا عايز أقول لحضرتك وللزملاء، أنا اشتغلت في الديسك المركزي في أكبر جورنالين يومي يعني في مصر. مفيش كلام عن الموضوع ده، مفيش حد يعرف كتير عن خطاب الكراهية. الألفاظ اللي بتحض على الكراهية بتتكتب عادي، والناس ما بتعرفش أو ما بتبقاش واخدة بالها أساسا إن هي بتعمل حاجة غلط أو حاجة مكروهة. هل إحنا ننتظر الناس لحد ما تجينا؟ لو انتظرنا الناس لحد ما تجينا هيفضل العدد قليل جدا. أنا عايز أتكلم عن واقع تجربتنا احنا في منتدى المحررين المصريين، وده منتدى المحررين المصريين منتدى خاص بالمهنة، جسر وسيط ما بين الصحفيين المصريين وما بينهم وما بين الخارج. وعندنا نيوزليتر يومي في ما يضم حوالي 1000 اديتور بيوصل لهم نيوزليتر اسبوعي كل 3. احنا عملنا ايه في منتدى المحررين المصريين؟ ما استنيناش حد يجي لنا. اولا بنعمل اوتريتش للصحف نفسها، وبنروح ونقعد في الجرايد وفي غرف الاخبار وبنكلم الناس عن ايه هو منتدى المحررين المصريين. ممكن نعمل ده ونقول ايه هو خطاب الكراهية وازاي نحاربه. ممكن نعمل ايضا طاولات حوار ونقعد مع الناس وندردش معاهم ونقول لهم خطاب الكراهية. ممكن نتفق على انه يتعمل تدريبات كمان على خطاب الكراهية في غرف الاخبار في الجرايد او في اي مكان يتفق عليه. انا كمان بحلم انه الموضوع يبقى اوسع من كده. احنا محتاجين انه دراسة كيفية مكافحة خطاب الكراهية او ما هو خطاب الكراهية يبقى جزء من تدريس الصحافة والاعلام. انت بتدرس صحافة وبتدرس اعلام، معاهم لازم تدرس ايه هو خطاب الكراهية بالظبط وازاي هتكافحه. الموضوع لا يجب ان يقتصر على مجموعة صغيرة مؤمنة محدودة التأثير، كمان زي اللي بيزعق في الصحراء مش سامع غير صدى صوته. إذا لم تصنع التغيير يصنع بصنع مزاج عام ضد هذه المسألة. يبقى إذا لم نستطيع أن نصنع مزاج عام في الوسط الصحفي والإعلامي يستنفر لما يحصل حاجة من هذا النوع، سيظل الموضوع مقفول علينا وانتخابي قوي وانتقائي قوي، وحتى مش قادرين نأثر في، مش عايز نقول بقى في المحيط العام، في المحيط الصغير بتاع الصحفيين. يعني بيتكتب كلام هؤلاء الشواذ وهؤلاء القتلة وهؤلاء مش عارف، كلام تحريضي جدا وبيتكتب بدم بارد، لأن من كتبه لا يعرف إن هو بيخلق مشكلة أو إنه بيحرض على حد أو إنه ممكن يتسبب في اغتيال حد على الأقل معنويا. المسألة لازم نخرج من الغرف الضيقة. في وسائل كتير ممكن نفكر فيها غير اللي أنا قلته. أنا طرحت يعني رؤيتي أنا في الموضوع، وده جزء من الحل. ولو قعدنا كلنا نفكر ممكن نعمل إيه، هنلاقي أدوات أكتر من كده بكتير تخلينا أكثر انتشارا.
التفكير ضروري، أو بعتقد إنه هيدا واحد من الأسباب يلي موجودين فيها نحن هلأ هون. بس كمان بدي أخذ هيدا السؤال لرباب اللي كمان صحفية مصرية، صحفية إذاعية. رباب، الحديث اللي كان عم يحكي عنه طارق إنه لازم ناخذ هيدا الجلوسري أو ناخذ الحديث عن خطاب الكراهية خارج نطاق الغرف الضيقة. كيف نأخذ هذا الحديث ونجعله حديث عام؟
هو لازم الأول نخاطبه على المستوى الضيق علشان نخرج بيه للمستوى العام. خليني أدي مثل بسيط جدا، لأن أنا بخاف أحيانا إن احنا كصحفيين إن احنا نشتغل على طريقة أولترس الكورة، الصحفيين اللي ضد خطاب الكراهية مع الصحفيين اللي مع خطاب الكراهية. يمكن المثل ده هيقرب الصورة، ان كان في صحفي صديق تعرض لخطاب الكراهية، خطاب تحريضي أثناء ما كان بيرشح نفسه لنقابة الصحفيين، لأن كان عنده خطاب مناهض أو يعتبر معارض للدولة، فبعض الخطابات التحريضية أو بعض الكتاب كانوا بيحرضوا ضده. هو نفس هذا الشخص قبل عدة سنوات قام بالتحريض ضد أقليات دينية لأنها لم تكن أقليات إبراهيمية، عفوا لم تكن من أصحاب الديانات الإبراهيمية. إذن هو شخص قام بخطاب التحريض وتعرض لخطاب التحريض. لما ابتدينا نشتغل مع مجموعات تعرضت لخطاب التحريض وأيضا قامت بخطاب التحريض، ابتدوا يشوفوا الصورة بشكل أوقع، قد إيه ده ممكن يؤثر عليهم، فيبتدوا يفكروا في هم إزاي ممكن يأثروا على حياة الآخرين. فهو لازم الأول أبتدي من المنطلق الضيق، لأن أنا ما ينفعش أبتدي أتكلم بشكل عام أكثر وإن احنا نروج للموضوع على طريقة هناك صحفيين وحشين بيحرضوا. فعلا في صحفيين بيحرضوا وبيعرضوا ناس وسلامتهم للخطر، ولكن أنا لازم أشتغل in parallel lines. دي النقطة الأولى. النقطة اللي قالها الأستاذ طارق عطية مهمة جدا، وهي الأوتريتش للمؤسسات. موضوع زي الجلوسري ده مفروض ان هو يكون فيه اوتريتش للمؤسسات التعليميه، كل كليات الاعلام اللي موجوده في مصر، يكون فيه اوتريتش كمان للانستتيوشنز، البريس انستتيوشنز، المراكز الصحفيه، الصحفيين، سواء كانوا بيشتغلوا في الاعلام الخاص او في اعلام الدوله، لان احنا كمان عندنا في اعلام الدوله مشكله اكبر. يعني هي المشكلة عامة، ولكن المشكلة أكبر في إعلام الدولة، وأنا بشتغل في إعلام الدولة يعني، فلازم يكون في بننتقد المسار اللي احنا فيه. الجزء الآخر إن لازم يكون في إشراك لمؤسسات الدولة نفسها. الفكرة مش إن احنا قاعدين نتكلم مع بعض وما تراه الدولة تحريضيا سيكون تحريضيا، وما لا تراه تحريضيا لن يكون تحريضيا. لازم تتحمل المسؤولية، ولازم احنا نعمل اوتريتش لهذه المؤسسات. على سبيل المثال كان في بنت تعرضت للتحرش في محافظة الشرقية، واحدة من المحافظات في دلتا مصر. البيان اللي طلع من الشرطة كان كالآتي: وكانت ترتدي ملابس قصيرة جدا جدا. لما بنعمل حملات على السوشيال ميديا، ولما عملنا حملات أو توعية بخصوص هذا الأمر في من خلال الإذاعات الخاصة بينا، أو من خلال مقالاتنا، أو من خلال السوشيال ميديا اللي احنا بنستخدمها بشكل متوازي، قدرنا ان احنا نوصل رسالة: هو مهما كانت البنت بتلبس ما ينفعش ان انت تتحرش بيها. ففي نفس الوقت ده بيخلي الجهة اللي أصدرت هذه الكلمات تراجعها مرة واثنين، فرجع نفس المصدر قال ولكن هذا لم يكن سببا للتحرش بها. فلازم يكون فكرة بريشر، مش احنا بس بنكلم بعض وسايبين الستيت انستتيوشنز اللي ممكن تكون لربما يكون ما عندهمش وعي بده.
بس هو اكيد نحن بدنا نكلم بعض، لانه نحن بدنا نبدا نحكي مع بعض، والا ما يعني ما بدنا نضلنا نقول باقي بالغرف المغلقه ونحن اساسا مش عم نحكي مع بعض كصحفيين. يعني الجسم الصحفي لازم يبلش كمان يشتغل على نشر هيدي
هي نقطه انطلاق للعام، يعني الكلام مع بعض في الغرف المغلقه، وهي ليست مغلقه في عالم الانترنت، هي بس طريق لينا ان احنا نتكلم مع يعني a wider spectrum.
شكرا. بس بدي اعطي الفرصه لنيلى على السريع، لانه ما معنا بس بعد ربع ساعه للاسئله، لانه انا بعرف انه نيلى اشتغلت انه to include you know combating challenging hate speech in your teaching classes, and you've also brought in the glossary of terms in your teaching, so just briefly.
Well, of course, I've been using it as a teaching tool to my students, so you already have like a generation of students who will become media persons who have awareness of the topic. But I also hosted a conference in Cairo last month, and we launched the media glossary again. That included academics from the region and around the world and students, and it was live streamed, so what Rabab said is correct. You can see this. And so I've tried to continue, working in my, little way to spread the word. And we're actually going to have another panel during the World Press Freedom Day addressing hate speech again.
I guess it's what we are doing here, and what Naila and and Tarek and Egyptian journalists are doing here is just the beginning. It's literally the beginning of a long process of challenging hate speech in media content in Egypt and also in other parts of the Arab world. So we'll start with questions. So I'll take Magda, and I know there's, what's your name? Ahmad, and someone here, Michelle, and then Dana. Magda.
Thanks. Naila, I want to take issue with what you said about you excluded online media since there's more in online media, and you felt it's a private space. Yeah. It's not really a private space, because when it's used by state-run institutions or even private media, what we call traditional media, entre parenthèses, it's still hate speech. I mean, it's not just someone blurting off in a tweet or a Facebook post.
I do agree with you, but
I realize it's a humongous thing and would require a lot more work, but it's not really a private space, is it?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I mean, it's just that it's another animal altogether. So I found that it's impossible to include it when you're looking at traditional media. It would need its own, it's worth its own glossary. Put it that way. Well, there's everything. I mean, there's, no, but there's also institutions, but a lot of private. Yeah. But it wouldn't really, I believe, would need its own glossary. It's just like looking at a different type of space.
I think I got what Tarek was asking. If it is social media people posting, I think it's a different type of glossary from looking into glossary of journalists, of rhetoric and discourse, professional journalists using certain terms and discourses in the way they write or they broadcast. I think it's two different things in that kind of glossary of terms for journalists.
I think the point, maybe there's a misunderstanding, correct me if I'm wrong. I think the point here is that, of course, we're talking about, like you said, any newspaper is online, right? So of course, if you're talking about hate speech with professional media, you're gonna be affecting the output that appears on any platform, including digital platform. But with the line sort of not very clear between who's a professional journalist and who's like a citizen journalist and all that kind of stuff, maybe that's what Naila meant when she said, can we actually even put as a goal that we stop all hate speech appearing by citizen journalists, stuff like that, on social media platforms? That might be a bit too big to chew right now. I don't know. Although they sometimes learn from the media, maybe that's what Aiden was going to say. they sort of parrot what they hear in the media.
هو السؤال بتاعي يعني أكمل على الزميل اللي كان بيسأل. هو احنا المفروض يعني نشوف خطاب الكراهية بالنسبة للصحفيين ولا بالنسبة للجمهور الأول؟ يعني احنا هنوعي الجمهور الأول عشان لما يوصل له حاجة عن طريق الصحفي أو النيوز أو الكلام ده يبقى عارف يعني إيه كراهية وإيه مش كراهية. لان انا شايف ان في حد فاصل جدا ما بين الحريه والكراهيه. يعني انا مثلا في الجورنال مثلا اللي بشتغل فيه، لما اشوف ظاهره مثلا منتشره في مدينه ما عن وقائع مثلا الافارقه، حاجه متخصصه في السرقه والنصب ومش عارف ايه والكلام ده كله، هل معنى ان انا لو كتبت تحقيق عن عصابات المافيا الافارقه معنى ان انا بحط الكراهيه بوقائع؟ حاجه ثانيه، لو انا مثلا اكتشفت ان في فريق مسيحي في مصر للمسيحيين عن الكوره في مصر مثلا وكتبت عنهم، هل ده كراهيه؟ الجمهور نفسه يستقبل ده ازاي؟ هيقول بقى ده مسلم ومسيحي والكلام ده. انما انا شايف ان الجمهور الاول لازم يعرف الكلام ده قبل كمان الصحفي عليه دور بس الجمهور برضه لازم يكون فاهم.
Okay. I think I'll have Naila and Tarek also answer that, but I think there's always لازم دايما it depends on the context and the way الطريقة يلي عم تكتب فيها. يعني إذا أنت عملت موضوع عن فرقة قبطية، it's كيف عم تحكي عن الفرقة القبطية. Okay. إذا حدا قال شيء على السوشيال ميديا، وهذا اللي انقال على السوشيال ميديا في كلام بيحرض على العنف أو على الكراهية، أنت كصحفي لازم تسأل حالك هيدي ال5 points test، هيدي ال5 نقط البحث أو دراسة الخطاب الكراهية. لازم تسأل حالك أنا إذا تناولت هيدا الموضوع عم وصل هيدا الحديث لعدد أكبر من الناس، يمكن ما كان وصل له إذا أنا خليته على هيدا البوست لهيدا هيدا التويت أو هيدا البيج لهيدا الشخص على السوشيال ميديا. كله أنا برأيي يعني بيتوقف على أنت كيف عم تتناول هيدا الموضوع.
انا عارف تقريبا انت بتتكلم عن ايه، لان فعلا كان في كذا نموذج حضرتك. انا بس عايز اوضح نقطه بس بعد اذنك. يمكن انت بتتكلم عن موضوع نزل في احد المواقع او احد الجرايد اللي كان بيتكلم عن منطقه معينه في القاهره فيها سرقات كتير، وكان التحقيق تقريبا بيقول ان اللاجئين الافارقه هم كانوا يعني زي ما تقول بوظوا المنطقه دي وكانوا بيمارسوا ممارسات سيئه، صح كده؟ مش هو ده التحقيق اللي انت بتتكلم عنه؟ طيب الفكره هنا انه الصحفي اللي بيعمل التحقيق ورئيس التحرير اللي وافق على نشر التحقيق هنا وهو شايف الماده اللي جايه له، هل الناس اللي الصحفي ده كلمهم اللي هم ناس ساكنين في المنطقه قالوا احنا شفنا كذا وشفنا كذا وكذا، هل الكلام اللي قالوه اللي قد يكون فيه نسبه من كلمات تدل على الكراهيه او تدل على على العنصريه، هل كان ممكن الاديتور ياخد قرار انه ماشي يمكن في فعلا قضيه حقيقيه بس هيتناول القضيه دي ازاي من غير ما يقول كلمات او يعني يوافق على ان كوتس من سورسز تحد على الكراهيه؟ يعني كان ممكن مثلا بدل ما يخلي مواطن عادي يقول انه في سرقات كتير وكل اللي شفناهم بيسرقوا سود، كان ممكن يروح للشرطه المدنيه اللي في المنطقه دي ويجيب احصائيات حصل كام سرقه وحاجات زي كده، بدل ما يستخدم الكلمات اللي هي بتحض على الكراهيه من المواطن اللي قالها. فاهم قصدي حضرتك صح؟
Yes, I wonder if I could just sort of add a couple of comments which I think get to the heart of a problem. I mean, what is the purpose of a glossary? The purpose of a glossary is not just to have a list of banned phrases and words. The purpose of a glossary is to provoke a discussion, a debate, to get people to think twice before they act. And particularly, the aim is targeting here journalists because of the very special responsibility that journalists have. But in fact, this glossary should be an inspiration for a fresh debate. For example, it should be used to talk to political and corporate and religious-based centers of power, to say to these groups, are you respecting the need for civil discourse? Because journalists themselves are not normally the people who generate hate speech. Journalists are normally reporting the hate speech that comes from others. And therefore, this glossary should be a way of saying to other groups, whether it's political groups or it's religious groups or it's community groups, a way of saying, we in journalism are seeking to deal with this problem. What are you doing to try to deal with this problem? So I think it should be an inspiration for further work. I think the question of whether or not it needs to cover social media, I don't think it's necessary for us to take that decision. I think it may well be that groups dealing with media literacy may think that this is a really important initiative which the journalists have taken. Perhaps we should do the same in the field of education, and civil society. So in this sense, the glossary should be an inspiration for further actions in other areas, while at the same time saying to journalists, it's time for you to do better.
Yes, hi. So you previously mentioned that there is still not an agreed upon definition on what hate speech is. And ideally it would be criticizing without actually violating or humiliating others. But there's a very, very thin line between what is considered as critical and what is considered as humiliating, and even a thinner line between what is considered as critical or what is considered as freedom of speech. So what I may see as something very controversial or humiliating, others might see as very critical, while others might see simply as freedom of speech. So how do you believe that your glossary is helping in, let's say, thickening that line?
Well, you know, this is, it's a debate. And I think, again, it's very culturally bound, has to do, that's why I started to look at laws. Because, for instance, when you're looking at Egypt, we don't have the First Amendment. Okay, so, you know, what is free speech in America is definitely not free speech in Egypt. So this is not a defined boundary. This is just what we could work with, because, and also I think it changes over time. At different times, something would constitute hate speech, 5 years later may not.
If I may say, in Britain, for instance, this thin line is always related to freedom of expression. But what we look at is basically if that speech could lead into inciting harm and crime and violence. And that's where we try to make that kind of distinction in how we, you know, hate speech could lead to inciting, could lead to crime and harm and violence. And that's where we actually work on that line. Dana. Yeah, and then.
Hi, I really appreciate what you're working on, and I'm super glad that it's happening. My question goes, you said you were gonna plan to do one for the entire Arab region, and then you started with Egypt. So I just was wondering if there's a program or plan as to when you're going to spread it to other countries, and whether it can just, I mean, I think it's very possible for a parallel glossary to be happening in many other countries at the same time. So I was wondering if there's a plan, if there is one, how can I like help in making it happen and so on?
Actually, you have Tom and Aiden here, and yes, there is a plan. I think next step is Jordan. Our Jordanian colleagues are working on something similar, but I'll just briefly, Tom.
Thank you very much for your support for the project. Yes, we would like to do this in many more countries. It is depending on funding. At the moment, we can't commission glossaries in many more countries, but we'd like to. I think going through this process, it also becomes clear that when you're doing observing and monitoring of hate speech, it has to be an ongoing process. And whatever glossaries we produce in the future, we want them to be online, so they're interactive, and so they can be updated regularly when events, some words and terms, they will drop off, but new ones will come as things will happen. So, for example, I know that the Syrian Media Center, they have a 5-year plan about how they are going to be monitoring hate speech in Syrian media. And I think, and we have to try to have that long-term approach wherever we can. It depends on, obviously, having the fund to do so, but it has to, this glossary here, as Naila said, is a snapshot. But we really would like to have a more ongoing process whereby it's actually updated regularly, so newsrooms can use it and refer to it, and so it doesn't get stuck as a PDF or the beautiful printed document which you have in your bag. So yes, we'd love to work with you and with others to do this in other places, and then eventually have somewhere where we can have all the different glossaries in one place. So if you are an Egyptian journalist going to cover the war in Syria, you can find the glossary on Syria and learn about the terms specific to that conflict, which you might not even be aware of. Or if you are a Lebanese journalist going to Libya, then there'll be, hopefully, I know UNESCO are developing one for Libya as well. So we want to also play a coordination role, so all the work that's being done on this can be found in one place, so that journalists can refer to it and use it in their work. So I hope that answers your question, and we'd love to work with you in the future.
Thank you. And I think what you also tried to say, it needs commitment in a way. Last question. I saw a hand. Last question.
محمد سالم، نقيب الصحفيين في موريتانيا. أولا نحن نعيش نقلة من حيث الممارسة المهنية. كنا نمارس صحافة تقليدية تقوم على قواعد ولها أسس. الآن أصبحنا أمام صحافة انتشار صحافة مواطنية، أدواتها هي أدوات الإعلام الجديد، تستخدم هذه الأدوات، وبالتالي هذا يوسع من دائرة انتشارها. واحد عنده هاتف نقال يمكن يستقبل أي معلومة، وبالتالي المعلومات المنشورة أيضا عبر هذه الصحافة المواطنية وصحافة الإعلام الجديد يغلب عليها نشر ثقافة الكراهية أو خطاب الكراهية على الأصح. أعتقد أن الإخوة في مصر خلال ما استمعت إليه الدليل، نحن نحتاج خصوصا في المنطقة العربية إلى دليل عربي. يعني هناك بعض المستخدمات اللي تستخدم هنا في أي بلد عربي تستخدم. هناك يعني بعض المصطلحات الموحدة داخل المنطقة العربية. نفكر في طريقة إنشاء شبكة عربية للصحافة الأخلاقية تمكننا من توحيد المصطلحات.
I will need to refer you to Aiden and Tom, and you probably need to have a discussion with Aiden and Tom. Mauritania, I think, is one of the countries that we need to work with. Any last question? Anyway, we're 5 minutes. Very quick one. Last one.
شكرا. انا الحقيقه هو مش كويستشن، انا يعني هطلع بالجلسه دي ب inspiration. يعني انا بشوف ان المراصد قصتها انها مرتبطه بمشروع، والمشروع اكيد ليه تمويل وبعد فتره ممكن ينتهي، فالقصه بتاعه الاستدامه شويه بتبقى يعني مشكله. انا بشوف ان المؤسسات التعليميه أحد المنابر اللي ممكن أنها تشتغل في الموضوع ده، لأن تكوين مش فريق ولكن مؤسسة داخل كل مؤسسة تعليمية. في الجامعة مثلا، في جامعة القاهرة، إن احنا نعمل مرصد. المرصد مش بس يقف قدام الهيت سبيتش، إنه بيتكلم جزء منه يبقى الهيت سبيتش، لكن بيتكلم على الإثكس بشكل عام. ومن هذا المرصد كل سنه من الطلاب نبتدي ان احنا ندرب مجموعه من الطلاب يدخلوا ويعملوا اناليسز للماتيريال الموجوده وتتوظف في كذا ماده. يعني مش بس ماده متعلقه بموضوع، انا بشتغل مثلا حاجه عن الجندر فممكن اشتغل جزء عن المراه، حد بيشتغل عن التنوع فيبتدي ياخد الجزء عن الدايفرستي اند سو اون. فانا بشوف ان المؤسسات التعليميه احد المؤسسات المؤهله انها تتبنى مثل هذه المشروعات، لانها مش هتخلص. طلاب كده كده بيجوا، الدكاتره كده كده بيشتغلوا، ماتيريال عايزين نشتغل عليها. فبالعكس فرصه كبيره لينا كمدرسين وحتى كطلاب ان احنا نستثمر مثل هذه الآلية في انتاج مواد تساعدنا في التدريس وتساعدنا في ان الطلبه ياخدوا قدره على التحليل وعلى النقد وعلى انهم لما يطلع يشتغل كاعلامي يبقى عنده الوعي.
I really appreciate your inspiration. I think it's a conversation that we need to take further, but I think we're running out of time, so we need to close this session now. And I want to invite you all, remind you all of EGN movie evening at 8:30 here in the auditorium, where we're going to be watching 2 films, and we're going to have a panel to comment, give it feedback, and have an open discussion on the themes of the film and what do they stand for in relation to media content. Thank you.